Hey guys, welcome to a very special live stream here with myself, MaryGirl Moody, and my very special guest, Michael.
So, folks.
Michael is our very special guest today, and we're going to be talking about. I know a lot of you out there watch American Crime Story because we're all Ryan Murphy buffs. And season 1 of American Crime Story was fantastic. That was the O.J. Simpson case. And oh, Lord, don't get me started on that because that was a great season. Now, season 2, though, is what we're going to actually be focusing on today and is the topic, and that is Andrew Cunanan.
Andrew
Michael,
Cunanan.
Cunanan, yes, thank you
Yes.
so much. Because see, I didn't know. Now that's why we're here. So, Michael, you knew Andrew.
Yes, I sure did. We're all from San Diego. Andrew was raised here in San Diego. As you guys may have known, if you've seen the show or know anything about him. And I am also gay, part of the San Diego gay community. Andrew
Yeah,
was a
yes,
huge.
yeah.
That's right. Andrew was a huge part of the gay community, and we'll talk more about him and who he was and what he was all about. But in a town like this, in a city or a large city or a city that wants to be a large city, gay communities are important, and they're actually like a real community here is actually a part of town. It is its own neighborhood with its own shops and its own streets and its own housing and everything like that. So you literally, like, I live right in Hillcrest. I don't have to go out anywhere else in San Diego because everything is right here for me with all my peeps,
Hmm.
and local businesses and everything. So Andrew was a huge part back then of the Hillcrest community, of the gay community. So it's a small community in a large city. So
So you
that's
would
the
definitely everybody would know each other.
yeah, a lot of people, Andrew and I are about the same age, and so that kind of age group, with like interests and stuff, would hang out. We're going to talk about some of the places we would hang out, but that kind of like interest that you share with people your own age and stuff. So with being about Andrew's age is how I got to know him.
Absolutely. Well, that's incredible. So, what was it? What was it like back then? I mean, was it now? Obviously, I don't understand what the struggle. Well, I saw the struggle of because I had a lot of people in my in our clique that was gay, and they could not say anything because we lived in a very small conservative
Correct.
town. So I could not imagine them actually being able to go somewhere where like the Blind Melon song, where you can find people who are like you and who don't judge you, and they're all awesome just like you. So was that?
It's What's interesting is, okay, this is we're talking late '90s when all this was going on. I've been in San Diego since '92, I believe.
Mhm.
The Andrew Cunanan stuff happened, Versace stuff happened in '97, so this would have been about '96, somewhere in '95, '96, and at that time, that's Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and San Diego is a huge Navy town. And so the gay community in San Diego was really based off of the Navy and off the Navy bases and stuff. So you had a huge influx of Navy personnel, Marine personnel that are out in the gay community because in town and through their work and stuff, Hillcrest was about the only place they felt safe because everybody was watching each other's back. And so during the late '90s, it was really really focused around that whole Navy thing and who was in the military, who was out of the military. My boyfriend at the time was active duty, and we would have to go through that whole thing where he lived a completely separate life once he stepped out of the house or stepped out of Hillcrest on his normal life. I didn't get to share anything with him in his work life or his achievements or anything like that during the whole '90s because Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a very very serious thing.
Absolutely.
um, there, well, we'll get into that with the whole Andrew if you want to, but let's just go ahead and talk about it. There's back then there was a place called the Caliph. And the Caliph, in gay communities, you have a lot of bars. Bars are really the focal point because, in societies like that, uh, way back in the day, people would meet at bars. They were underground bars, and it just became part of our culture. And it still is
Yeah.
today a huge part of our culture. And so, like, in a place like Hillcrest, in these neighborhoods, certain streets will have bars all lined up kind of next to each other. And one of the bars at the time was this place called the Caliph. And this was a place where people could meet military personnel and also was a place where older established gentlemen would meet younger guys that they would want to have as living companions and stuff like that. And Andrew was a huge part of that clique community, and that's where he would meet some of his little, the older guys that would take care of him. We'll talk about who Andrew really was and how crazy that whole thing was. But so there was places like that, like the clique, where military people could be or younger guys for lovers, companions, things like that, because we had to find places where we could look for things like that and find, because you couldn't just go out in normal society back then. Now it's a little easier, but this is pre-internet, this is pre-Grinder, this is pre all of that kind of stuff.
Can't believe there was still a time where everything was just pre-digital, like everything is now. That's us. That's our generation.
Well, it's like thinking about just talking about Don't Ask, Don't Tell is absolutely crazy to me, because here I am. I'm married now. I live in absolute, almost quote unquote society, normal life with my husband. When back in the day, just 20 years ago, I'm with this other guy who we're hiding our entire life because of him being unsafe for his work. It's just amazing how far we've come.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Mm-hmm. It is pretty incredible. And do you think sometimes that maybe if Andrew just kind of would have held on a little bit longer, maybe just kind of...
No, Andrew was crazy.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. Because sometimes I have hope for people who do these horrible things. Maybe it was society that did it to him. Maybe it was, him being closeted gay, possibly, or more than likely, obviously, and that he just couldn't express himself. He couldn't live his life. And I could never imagine. I love going outside. Well, when I could. I love going outside and mowing the lawn in last year's Pradas when I could afford them. And that's my thing. I could not imagine if somebody told me that I couldn't do that, because it was illegal or it was immoral or loving my husband was wrong or immoral, so I wouldn't want to say that to anybody else.
Well, with Andrew, it was about, from what I've learned about him, sense and a lot of documentary and stuff that makes sense, put pieces together. For Andrew, it was about status. It was never about sexuality.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so he lived his entire life, from what I understand, just wanting to be somebody that he's not, wanting to be, rich, or wanting to be, he's embarrassed of his parents and things like that. And that can really drive a person, mentally. But then they also spoiled him. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I saw too, that, his dad especially gave him everything, the best education, the best room in the house, the best everything. He even got a car when the rest of his older siblings had nothing. So
speaking of his dad, did you get that picture I sent you of me and John?
I did. Okay, so can I screen share, because I am going to, is it okay if I pull up some of the pictures?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so guys, let me pull them up very quickly. So guys, Michael sent me some pictures, and let me go on ahead and screen share with you guys, because I've got them right here. No, here we go.
Yeah, that's one.
Okay, there's one.
Okay. Well, we'll go to these bars in a minute. And talk about what they are. But the first picture. Okay, wait. Go back.
Okay.
To the one, the little. Okay, this right here. This is the starting picture of my story of what it is. This is an actual 3D render of this shopping center. But this shopping center was kind of it's called the Uptown District. And it's the center point, the heart in Hillcrest.
Yeah.
And right there on that corner, that corner white building, that used to be a warehouse, books, music, and video store. And during the late 90s, I was actually I was in nursing school at the time, but I was the video department manager of that store. Right across the street from this store, if you go back to the bar pictures, is Flicks. Everything in our story is going to take place around Flicks. That's the actual. If you flip it, and then the first picture of Flicks is what they quote unquote use in the show.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh.
Yes. Okay.
Now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's actually a bar in Long Beach that they use, but I took pictures of the actual bar to show you what Flicks really is. But Flicks is directly across the street from the shopping center where I work. There's the actual Flicks.
Okay.
And it's right there.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so a lot of stuff that takes place around this uptown district. Now, and behind that building is a whole bunch of apartment complexes and stuff, which is where this guy. Okay, this guy right here. This is where it starts. This is how I met Andrew. Okay, well we'll just go right into it. This 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 guy, he was a friend of my boyfriend at the time, and
You said right
his
here.
name, yes, that's Stephen Zealand. Okay,
Right.
and with Andrew right there. Stephen Zealand ended up writing a book about Andrew afterwards because Stephen and Andrew were childhood, like high school age rivals. They were they loved each other and hated each other at the same time. They always wanted to be each other. They always wanted to outdo each other. And
Wow, that's
and
very
Stephen,
interesting.
yeah, and Stephen and my boyfriend at the time were friends.
Okay.
And so that's so when
So that was your
we met.
mutual connection.
Correct. That was how we had an initial connection with Andrew, and we didn't hang out with Andrew in the beginning a lot because of they were kind of rivals. They were kind of love hate kind of things. But Andrew was around. You have we were all 20 some odd at the time. In our mid 20s.
Absolutely. Fun and fancy free.
You this kind of mentality going on, and we would all go out at night to Flicks. Flicks was a bar. What Flicks is a video bar, which is basically they've got a lot of video screens that go around in there. They played music videos at the time. They played like RuPaul's Drag Race wasn't on, but like the show Queer as Folk was on at
Oh
the time in the
yes,
90s,
absolutely.
yeah, and on the night that Queer as Folk was on, they would play Queer as Folk on the TV, and everybody would gather and watch. It still happens today with like RuPaul's Drag Race and stuff. You go to the bars and you have a viewing party.
Oh,
Flicks is
that's
that
cool.
type of bar, and so everybody would like hang out there, and then that's how I first met Andrew was one night in at Flicks. Now, what's interesting about Andrew, and the show didn't touch on this quite a lot, but they did kind of mention it a little bit. None of us knew him as Andrew Cunanan. Nobody knew who this guy really was. We
Okay.
all knew him as Andrew De Silva or Andrew Del Rio,
Oh,
depending on who he introduced himself to. I always knew him as Andrew De Silva. That was the only name I ever knew him by. And he absolutely, what the show got really right. Now, I had not hung around with Andrew like hundreds of times. It wasn't like somebody that I would pick up the phone to call. But
absolutely.
when we were out at the bars, we knew who each other were. We knew each other by first name. We knew to say hi or whatever.
Casual
But
thing. Yeah.
it's like I wouldn't go over to Andrew's house and hang out with him. It was like a nighttime social
You don't
thing.
do crazy, huh,
Yeah,
Michael?
yeah, exactly. I probably would have if we were that closer as a friend, God forbid, but he was what what's interesting about looking back at Andrew now and thinking about who he was then and the memories that I have in my mind is there was nothing threatening about him. There was nothing serial psycho killer about him. There was nothing like, oh my God, this guy's going to turn around and, kill one of the most famous fashion designers in the world or this manhunt or anything like that. He was really your typical flamboyant uh, party starter. He always wanted to make sure that everybody was laughing and having a good time. And, like at Flicks, there was a bunch of tables and pool tables, and then there was a bar. Andrew would stand up on top of one of the tables and get people rallied up and stuff. Oh, my battery's going low. And he was just like the big party guy, the big clown. And
Wow.
he didn't set anybody off. He didn't have like any bad taste in anybody's mouth. Now he would get queenie or bitchy or something and have like spats with people.
Like a diva moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But he wasn't threatening in any way. But come to find out after we started learning everything about him, we know none of us. Now that's what the show really got right is that none of us really knew who he was. We didn't know his background.
Mm.
We had no clue of his family background. The show really went into detail about who he was and who his father was and his parents and stuff. We thought this kid was rich. He was always covering everybody's bill. You see him and you knew that this guy who was the life of the party. If you were short money, everybody's like, don't worry, Andrew's got you. He was that type of person.
That's a cool guy.
Yeah, yeah, sure. People want to hang out with him, and so when the manhunt happened afterwards, and the manhunt we'll talk about was a very very confusing time in San Diego, especially in Hillcrest, San Diego gay Hillcrest, because and the show didn't show any of that, and that's where what a lot of my big memories are from the whole thing was really freaky. But at the
Okay.
time, but the summer before David, the summer before Jeffrey Trail, um, was just a typical 20 some odd year old gay person who had a lot of money, would treat people to, fun, and just hang out. And nobody would ever thought that Andrew would have pulled the things that he did,
So
when he did.
let me ask you, Michael. The
Hmm.
show kind of implied, and let me stop sharing for a few minutes so we can see each other. Then the show
Hmm.
kind of implied that Andrew did what he did because he was, he did have traumas, but that he did it because he was closeted homosexual that couldn't admit it to anybody, and that just kind of, even though he had problems, it just went too far. I know.
My
Do you think that that's
I didn't know him as far as what his psyche was at the time, but from what I understand, learning about it afterwards with like documentaries and stuff, was that his thing was about his family, his embarrassment of his family, and the status, because his family is a Filipino descendant family that come from very, very poor upbringings. And his father, who's played by John Briones, that we also saw in Apocalypse, his father would tried to was any situation he can to further the benefit of his family, because they wanted to be in a different status class. They wanted to have more money. They wanted to be more from what I understand, had that whole thing wrapped in his psyche, that he would do anything, step on anybody, lie to anybody, manipulate anybody, to make sure that he had the status in the class, that he would never be embarrassed by his family again. And it had nothing to do with sexuality at all. Now, what there was always a question, from what I'm hearing from documentaries and stuff in the past: was Andrew truly a homosexual, truly a gay man? Oh yeah, hon, he was gay. He absolutely loved men. He was, when he was out, if somebody was putting up a front sexually to say, he's just trying to manipulate somebody, you wouldn't interact or have the physical manifestations and stuff that with other men, or whatever, just socially, on when nobody's watching you, or anything like that. So I feel sexuality, I think that really was who he was, but I don't think it had anything to do with his manipulations. His manipulations was about money, about class, wanting to be somebody he wasn't.
so I would understand then that he never told people about his past, his family, that he never showed, his
His
pride,
name,
his love for his family, because he
we
was trying to keep it kind of like a, a little shameful secret. Why do you think then that, I don't know. I mean, would you say then the show again, it really tried to do a number on you to make you wonder if Andrew was gay or not. And to be honest with you, to me, it doesn't matter if he was or not. It was his personal choice. But they just made it seem like it was a contributing factor to what he did, and it just seems like it really wasn't at all. That it's still kind of a conundrum of why he did the things that he did. But I guess I'd have to go back.
I see. I find that so fascinating too. But it's not just American Crime Story. Other documentaries and stuff about him has said the same thing. It's like, what was his what was he trying to gain by the sexuality and stuff and everything. And I feel that he was gay, and that was just what he was attracted to, and therefore that was the community he was around, and those were the people he was manipulating. So I think horse before the cart, as type situation. So I don't think there was ever a question about, was he using homosexuality to manipulate. No, he was in the homosexual community. So those are the people he manipulated, and those are the people he found. He found where he could get money from, and these were older gentlemen who like themselves younger boys, or younger, 20 some odd year old guys, who they can go to parties and show off and stuff. Because we have some very rich areas in San Diego. We have La Jolla, we have Rancho Penasquitas, we have Rancho Santa Fe here, and these are like Southern California rich people here. And those gentlemen would go to like a bar like the Caliph, like I was talking about, and pick up people like Andrew. And Andrew, it was absolutely open and willing. And there's many guys out there like that, to live that lifestyle and give this older gentleman the love and gratification, whatever the older gentleman needs. And that's where Andrew would get all of his money. But then when Andrew would hang out with people like me, our age group, Andrew would present himself that was his life and his money, not that he was. We never knew these older gentlemen. We never knew where he was living. We never knew anything like that. Maybe his closer friends did, but those that would just kind of go out to the bar and see him, we never knew. We just thought Andrew was a rich guy.
And then you said that he was a person that you obviously knew as an acquaintance, but you'd never go to his house and hang out with him. Why? I mean, was there a feeling that you got from him whenever you did meet him before, or do you think, he just really wasn't like?
I just wasn't that big into his circle. It was like, we had a friend. It basically was like, for me, it was like a friend of my boyfriend's who was friends with Andrew. So it was like outer inner circle. We would see them all out together. We would, because his Steven Zealand and him, being like rivals and stuff, there wasn't a lot of times where they would hang out together, but they knew each other, and they knew each other well enough to where, like, if our friends were here and Andrew's friends were here, everybody would kind of commingle. But it wasn't like we were calling Andrew and his friends to go out the next night. So it was like two kind of subgroups of people.
Okay. So, but everybody generally knew Andrew as kind of like a generous, rich,
absolutely. Loved him. Absolutely. That he was one of the people that you walk into a room, if Andrew was there, and Andrew had this really, and it's somebody in one of the documentaries was talking about it when I was researching this, looking up things to try and jog my memory, and somebody was talking about Andrew's laugh. It was one of the older bartenders from Flicks they were interviewing. It was talking about Andrew's laugh, and oh my God, the flood of memories that came back. Andrew had this incredible, boisterous laugh. The whole room would hear it. It was a very, very, like almost like something theatrical or something, that you would see a big, huge, like a carnival barker doing.
Not like a Fran Drescher, but something that, eye-catching in a good way.
Yeah. So like when you would hear that coming into one of the bars, you knew you were in for a good night, because Andrew was a good time at that time.
And when did you meet David Madson?
I met David Madson twice, and that's when that was about the time in Andrew's life or that time where things were really, really strange. And it's like, I never knew why things were strange with him. I never knew what was going on. But like when David came into the picture, we knew David as that cute guy from San Francisco. It's like, oh, that cute guy from San Francisco's here. After we had met him the first time, when they were in the same room together, like we were all out at Flicks. One night we were out at dinner with not Steven, another friend of Steven's. I can't remember who it was. And David showed up, and Andrew was with this group of people as well. There was like 14 or 15 of us there. We had gone with other people, but Andrew and his friends were there. Andrew and David acted as if they didn't know each other. And yet conversations would come up, and they would connect in conversations. But David was obviously learning after the fact. David was obviously there because of Andrew, but they sat in opposite sides of the room and act like they didn't know each other. It's really strange thinking back on the whole thing. We didn't know it. We didn't know David as associated with Andrew. We knew David as this guy from San Francisco that kind of just intermingled with people. And we really didn't know whom he was connected with. Because David didn't live in San Diego. David, the time we saw him, he just visited a couple of times. But he was always this guy that was there, and everybody kind of knew him by name, but nobody knew his association with anything until after everything happened and after he was murdered. Everyone's like, holy shit, he was with Andrew. So it was really bizarre. Really bizarre. But again, that's for me and my outer circle. Some of his closer friends might have known that David and Andrew and like Jeffrey Trail. I never met Jeffrey Trail, and from what I hear, Jeff was around a lot more than David was. And this is something I was never in. I don't believe I was ever in the same room with Jeffrey Trail. So I have no idea, because Jeffrey Trail was military here, so he was part of that whole military community. But
that's right.
As far as I can,
Navy. That's right.
As far as I can remember, I don't think I've ever met or been in the same room with Jeff. At all.
Well, that you were more familiar with like Andrew and just generally more than David. Okay.
Yeah, and the Andrew interactions that I have, remember, Andrew murdered all of these people within a very short time frame. I believe in the summer of '97. A lot of my interactions were '96. I believe the year before was a lot of my social interactions with Andrew. I think it was '97, I believe.
And it's not like back then, you could just check them up on Facebook and just see, oh, he's in a relationship status with David. And David said that he's in a relationship status on his Facebook, which is drama. You know, it's not like you really get all that detailed information like you do 20 years later. So
exactly.
Absolutely.
It's so bizarre. You know, 20 years later, it's like especially seeing documentaries. Documentaries are crazy for me, especially with this story, because it's like, oh, wow. Okay, wait a minute. Now, thinking back on that, was that with that? What? You know, you start to try and put pieces together from your own disjointed memory and your own, you know, experiences. And we'll talk about the FBI investigation. That really confused everything. That was really, really, really interesting.
Be very interested to hear that.
Yeah.
And guys, don't forget, if you are enjoying the live stream, please give it a thumbs up. And of course, you can click to subscribe if you would like more live streams like this. If you want to take it a step up and donate via super chat, you are amazeballs, and I'll give you a shout out. So obviously then, you know, Andrew was a general guy. So Andrew, I guess he kept to himself then, Michael. He never said, hey, oh, I have this great guy that I'm kind of dating, or, you know, I'm going to go visit my sister tomorrow. She's got a kid, you know, something like that. He was never personal, never really talked too much about himself. He's just really more of a party person.
No, I would say just the opposite. He would never talk to himself about his real identity, but no, he would brag. He was absolutely. Oh, hold on, I muted this. He would absolutely put on a show about who he was and you know, that the constant lies about, you know, his status and work he was doing, and the show really did kind of capture. I don't think that the show really captured real stories that he was doing, but they captured the idea that he would go around and he would absolutely say that he was working with this designer, or he was working on this Broadway show, or, you know, he invested this in Wall Street. You know, I don't remember any specific stories that he did, but he would do that. So he created in his own head and for his own social circles whatever he wanted you to believe, whatever the story was. And again, we never knew him as Andrew Cunanan. We knew him as Andrew De Silva. And some people even knew him afterwards. We found out when the FBI were investigating, they knew him as like Andrew Del Rio, I believe. So he never even admitted to his name, to his family.
So there was absolutely no suspicion back then that, hey, this guy might have
not in my circle.
Ixnay or hanging out with Andrew K. Yeah, you know, I mean,
again, my circle with him was more of seeing him out in bars. We had mutual friends, mutual acquaintances. We could share drinks. We could have a laugh. And then we'd go on with our business and whatever, and not worry about it.
So then talk about the impact. I can honestly imagine how shocked you could be at that time when it came out, especially in 97.
Yeah, it was weird because it affected the entire community in a very bizarre. I mean, just the FBI investigation of Hillcrest alone would make for a great TV show itself, because what had happened was, and the show doesn't do a good job of putting time frames together with the investigation, because the show, what the show did was brilliant, was that it took the show backwards. I really like that aspect of it. You saw it from Versace's death, and what happened in San Diego, in Hillcrest at the time, was it was hunt in Florida that all of a sudden the FBI was starting to investigate and question people in San Diego. So he had already murdered David and Jeffrey and the caretaker and what's his face from Chicago. What was his name? Leland.
Lee something.
Lee Meglin. That he murdered. Nobody had knew any of this was going on in San Diego, and then all of a sudden Versace's murdered, and then there's the guy comes storming into San Diego, into Hillcrest, and there was this real quick, massive FBI investigation that went on, and this was during Pride Month in San Diego in July.
Oh, and yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so I remember that during Pride, there was like all of this stuff. Well, first off, when the FBI came in, I sent you those pictures. Those pictures of the actual FBI warrant sheets, those were literally graffitied everywhere over Hillcrest.
Okay,
like anywhere you went, one of those posters was being given to you, or was on somebody's wall, or was in storefronts. And it was like, so going and looking at that every single place you turned of a person you knew that you used to sit and have drinks with was disheartening, to say the least. It was just absolutely, what's going on in this world? What are we doing? You know, how is this happening to us?
Absolutely. And I would assume that these are the ones that you're talking about.
Correct.
Oh, I see. Yeah, they listed as alias right there as well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you're sitting there looking at this picture of this guy, and you're like, I was just having drinks with this guy a year ago, sitting in this bar, listening to his laugh. Who do we trust? What do we do? So you deal with the kind of mystery. And first off, you find out that this person who you thought you knew, that you shared experiences with, was a complete fraud of everything that they ever told you. It was all the way down to his name. You find out that he just murdered all of these people, including one of the greatest icon fashion designers in the world. And then you start turning to your neighbor and say, can we trust anybody? And then, of course, you've got gay people who are dramatic anyway and who blow everything out of proportion as it is. All of a sudden, this myth, this ghost story of Andrew Cunanan started to really boil up in San Diego, especially during Pride Month. And people started spreading a lot of gossip and a lot of ghost stories and fake stories. And basically, by the time Pride rolled around that summer, everybody was like seeing Andrew. They had Andrew over at their house. Andrew was sneaking into people's windows at night. Andrew was going to come at because the way Pride works in San Diego is we have a little gay center, and Friday night there's a big rally, a big kickoff at the Gay and Lesbian Center, and then Pride officially starts and then Saturday morning is the parade and the festival and all that stuff. Well, that Friday night of that festival, the San Diego police were down there and the FBI were down there at the kickoff, surrounding the entire kickoff, because it had been rumored that Andrew was there, that Andrew was stalking in the crowd of the scene. So we were all scared to go out. We were all scared to leave our house. Rumors of him clawing into people's windows, very Richard Ramirez type style.
Wow.
It went from zero to this big, huge La Llorona kind of ghost story kind of crap of Andrew Cunanan. And this is the same guy that we used to have fun with, in a bar. So it was crazy. It was really, really crazy. But the FBI, I had two different reasons why. When I knew him socially, I didn't know him as friends, but I knew him socially, so I got interviewed for that. But the big thing that I got interviewed from was I was the video department manager at Warehouse Music, and Andrew had an account there. And so that was my first encounter with the FBI, is when they brought in the posters, and when the FBI comes storming into the warehouse, it is just like you see on the movies. It is exactly like you see on the movies. They come in there in their black suits and their sunglasses and their earpieces, and they ask everybody to back up against the wall. They come in there, they start stripping computers. They take every employee into the back one by one, and they sit you down in some room, sitting there there's like three of them sitting there just facing you, and they're just drilling you with questions. Anytime I see the FBI on TV now and it's like presented like that, scares the shit out of me, because we're only 20 something years old, and we're sitting here in this room with these FBI agents, and they have no mercy. It's grill, all these questions and everything, and you're afraid that you're going to sit there and perjure yourself, or you're going to get in trouble, for something that you really have no clue what's going on.
Exactly, and this is the FBI. No joke.
yeah, but they came into the warehouse and they stripped out computers, and I got interviewed, I think, 4 different times by the FBI, just because they were really, really concerned with Andrew's business dealings, because of a lot of the fraudulent stuff that he had committed. At him, I believe, at the warehouse as Del Rio, I believe, was the last thing. So we had, the warehouse was looking at some stuff of kind of fraud at the FBI, because we had opened. I came to find out I didn't open his video account, but whoever opened his video account at the warehouse, he went off a false name or false documentation, because we had all false information for him. We didn't have anything under Cunanan for him or anything like that. So then there's that aspect of it, of the FBI. We were being questioned on how do we, obtain our members, and how do we, receive payment or credit cards or, whatever, from all this stuff. So I was interviewed several hard drives. They did take computers, and this is just for his video rentals.
God, I know. What the hell did they do for his gym membership?
Yeah, this FBI investigation was so rampant and so fast that you could go down the street in Hillcrest and you would see FBI agents out, or you would see San Diego police out, because it's like when the manhunt was going on in Florida, all the intensity of the manhunt in Florida was happening at the same time in Hillcrest, because they wanted this guy and they wanted him fast. Because remember, Andrew was hiding out in Florida. He was hiding out in that boathouse, and that was a very short period of time. What the show got really right was the intensity in Florida of that manhunt. But we were experiencing the same thing here. And then of course you've got all the lies and all the gossip and everything. Nobody knew what was going on, but everybody knew it was really scary and it was really serious. And then once we all got, it was years later, probably, that we started seeing, because we still see, different stuff on the news and things that kind of, especially when Crime Story started again. It was really neat here in San Diego. When Crime Story started, all the old San Diego documentaries and all of that stuff would surface again. The news would start talking about it again because we had all of our local coverage here during the time. But there were some of us who knew him that didn't really know him until years later from watching American Crime Story and different shows about it. So it was really freaky.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, and also it's like you say. I mean, in the gay community, this is somebody that you trusted, that you partied with. Maybe wasn't your best friend, but this is somebody you trusted. And the fact that it turns out this person that you sat next to and maybe shared a drink with is the FBI's most wanted at that moment because he killed 4 people. I mean, that's I cannot imagine how sickening and how chilling that actually was.
You know what bothered me the most?
Nobody really trusted each other because if Andrew did it, who else could be doing it?
Exactly. That's what we felt at the time. We're like, we can't trust anybody. We don't know who you are. Everybody became suspect in whatever you were creating in your mind. What bothered me the most at learning stuff afterwards was David and Jeffrey's murder. Because, like I said, we were all the same age. So it's like one of my friends. I didn't know David well. I didn't know Jeffrey at all. But they were exactly who we were. We were all these type of people.
Right.
And I had heard the stories through all of the different news stuff during the time of what happened to David and Jeffrey. But seeing that episode on American Crime Story, that messed me up. Just seeing that episode and how they portrayed it, because all I kept thinking was all of my friends at that time, people that I knew, it brought me to those people. And to see if that's how that played out, we don't know. I mean, nobody was in that room. But if that was how that played out, that crushed me seeing that, because it would be like one of my friends going through that. It was an acquaintance that I knew, and the terror and just the way both of them kind of went through that. I can imagine, but I could imagine because they were my peeps. I knew I could put myself in their shoes because I was part of that, that whole community. So that was really, really hard to watch on the show.
Do you think that effect is still lasting in the community, in the gay community now, even in San Diego? Do you still think that everybody is still very I mean, I know obviously it happened 20 years ago, but is there still, I assume a lot of the gentlemen possibly still live there. I mean, and even with the new generation that's come in, I mean, it would seem like it's almost like Andrew was probably a legend over there, and some way that you whisper as a boogeyman to your friend.
He's more of my generation. He's still that legend. He's still that boogeyman. The younger generation, we found out, sadly, these kids have no idea who this guy is. They're not following. It's like when American Crime Story hit and people started talking about it, there was multiple younger guys that I would talk to and tell our stories, and me and a couple of my friends would tell stories of what was going on, and they had no clue that any of this happened. It's like out of sight, out of mind, and the next generation has moved on. But yeah, it's still brought up from time to time with people my age and older that went through it, and especially when the show surfaced, people started talking. We would go out. We had dinner. I remember me and my husband were having dinner with somebody. I think it was about the second or third episode Crime Story was out, and a friend of ours had moved in from Seattle and was asking me questions about Andrew, because Larry wasn't living here at the time, so he was asking questions as well. So there's still a lot of talk. There's still a lot of curiosity for people that was there, but the new generation have no clue.
Exactly. I know. For those of us who actually saw the O.J. Simpson car chase and saw the search for Andrew play out on television. I mean, I had just graduated high school. I was in college when this happened, and it was very shocking because it happened to Versace, and then all of a sudden it came out that he had murdered 3 people before. And I thought, oh my God, why didn't you say something when he killed these other people? Why were their deaths so meaningless. And I was always so fascinated with, why did it matter to the news outlet that Versace was killed? Why didn't it matter to them that David, Jeff, and Lee were killed too? It just didn't, you know, news media, sadly, but
Lee Miglin actually was the first one that got the process rolling, because remember, Lee Miglin was in a lot of money. You know, he was a substantial person. So it's like all of a sudden these substantial money-making white guys are now interesting to the police, but David and Jeffrey weren't. You know, I think if Andrew had not murdered anybody else besides David and Jeffrey, those two murders might have gone unsolved, I think.
Wow, that's actually
really sad.
Chilly to hear that, you know, Andrew probably would have gotten away with it, because he was obviously such a great liar. He could have possibly continued, obviously, on the rest of his life, knowing that he had done that and that he had killed 2 people. I mean, it's just so chilling that he possibly just could have stopped. Like you said, that could have been unsolved, and then he's still out there lying and getting away with it, and maybe possibly murdering even more people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, who knows? Well, that caretaker that got murdered by him is one of the most shocking ones, because that guy was just wrong place, wrong time. You know, he had nothing, because Andrew's little spree of murders, I don't know why my phone's not charging, but Andrew's little spree of murders was all about a journey, a story he was telling. He murdered Jeffrey and David. That was personal to him. That was, you know, that their whole 3-way relationship. Learning about it was very real to me with Andrew, because Andrew was an extremely possessive, jealous person. He would do that with just his friends. You know, if he had a good buddy, I can't remember her name, but there was a girl that he used to hang out with that he was above, that he didn't want other gay guys. He didn't want her falling for other gay guys, and her being, you know, those little gay buddies, you know, whatever. So you could see the possessiveness come out of him. So with Jeffrey and David, that was really, really personal. That was about those two becoming friends and potential lovers, and Andrew not having any part of that. And then once that happened with Jeffrey and David, then Andrew, and that poor freaking caretaker in that graveyard, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's really, really sad.
Do you think a lot of that came from when his dad would just spoil the hell out of him rather than his siblings?
Oh, yeah. Oh, probably. It's like with let's see if this plugs in. With Mateo, he from what learning about him afterwards, he would, what the hell? I'm trying to charge my phone. He from what I understand, he put Andrew, that what they showed on the show after researching it, realistic to what Andrew's life was really like. With his father, his siblings were absolutely second-class citizens to Andrew. Andrew got everything. Andrew absolutely everything in his life.
And his dad was basically a con man too.
Yes, his dad was got arrested and stuff for a bunch of fraud things with businesses and stuff, money dealings that he did.
Wow. And did you say that you did meet him, Michael? Because I thought, I don't know.
No. I know John Briones.
Okay.
I don't know. Because I since the early '90s when Miss Saigon came out. Miss Saigon is a huge part of my life, a massive part. Miss Saigon changed my life in a lot of different ways. And so I've been following John's career since '89, because John was in the original London production of Miss Saigon all the way through the recent Broadway revival. And so I had met him several times throughout the years, and I just went and sat and talked to him. It was in your email the last one time I sent, or in your email I sent. That's Steven Zealand and Andrew. Or no, is that David and Andrew? That's David and Andrew.
Okay.
Yeah, that's David and Andrew. Yeah, the picture of me and John I sent you was in the email I sent.
Oh, I don't have my email. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah. Oh, I have it on my phone here. Hold on.
I'll check it here in just a second. Let me stop.
I don't know if I can flip this up or not. Does it do that? Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can definitely still hear you.
Okay. Let me see here.
I'm going to try to pull up my email very quickly so that way I can...
Yeah, I can pull it up on the...
Pull that up. So that
okay.
See the picture that you're talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, no. So I met John, talked to him several times, and the last time I saw John and talked to him was in last December. I was in New York to go see Miss Saigon, and we got to talk afterwards. He's great. John. Anytime you see, like, when he was doing Ariel in America and Apocalypse, that kind of twinkle behind his eye, that kind of little spunkiness, that's a role that's very, very similar to who John is in person. He's great. I'm so glad that he's part of Ryan Murphy's family now.
I gotcha. I'm trying to pull it up. Because he played Arrow, right? I know.
Ariel. Yeah.
Ariel, that's it.
Yeah.
The way that they enunciated is, so weirdly.
Yes,
so
weird.
Okay, so
actually, he's getting ready to do that new show with Ryan Murphy as well.
Is it the
Revenge or something? I forget what it's called.
The politics one. The politician, I think.
Yeah, somebody in the chat. Mike, Gary, you guys there? What's the show? I can't see the chat.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Did you find it?
Yeah, I found it right here.
Oh, you got it? Okay. So I'm not back of my.
I'm just pulling my thing up right there. I'm just pulling the actual email up. I'm pulling up the images. Where are the attachments? Okay. Right there. Okay. So let me screen share. Yes, I know computer. Share computer. Okay, there we go. There we go.
Yeah, there's me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, shoot, I don't want to leave.
Yeah, he's so cool.
Email. All right. Yeah, that's awesome. That was a great. So, did you just see him randomly in New York?
No, I went to go see Miss Saigon. This was after the show. After Miss Saigon, we were chatting outside the stage door.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah. He's great. He's a lot of fun.
I bet so. And he really did do a great job playing Andrew's dad in the actual.
Great. I had never seen John in such a dark role like that. I mean, the engineer that he plays in Miss Saigon is a sleazy role, but not really kind of dark. But when John would show that anger and that frustration, especially like towards the end when he was having that really upset relationship with Andrew, John was great. I loved Ariel too. I thought he did a really good job in Apocalypse as Ariel. But yeah, I think his best performance today has to be with Mateo.
Nice, with American Crime Story. Yeah, I thought he did a great job. I mean, that was just
wow.
I mean, at some point you could kind of really tell where Andrew got his arrogance, his ego, and his feeling of self-righteousness, obviously. Yes. But still, I mean, there was a level that Andrew took it to that his dad never would. I mean, as far as we know. But yeah, that was a really great rendition that they did for American Crime Story. So you definitely feel that they got a lot of the aspects right about it, that there were things that
from what I understand, they got they did well with the timeline as far as showing, especially the manhunt. That I think that was the most realistic to show. When they were showing the FBI agents, the girl from Orange is the New Black, I believe it was, wasn't it? And the other guy, that confusion around the whole thing, we felt that here. So I thought the events of going backwards from Versace all the way back to David and Jeff was interesting. I wonder if watching it forward, it would feel as accurate, because watching it backwards really helps kind of mystify a lot of it. But they got the timeline right. They got, how events actually happened, piece by piece right. Hillcrest, I think they represented completely wrong. It was funny. We were just absolutely laughing at the TV at the way they represented what Hillcrest was and how, like, they showed a brief when they introduced David in the show, when Ace was first introduced on the show playing David. They showed the military stuff with Jeff. Wait, who's David?
Jeff played Finn Whitrock, or Finn Whitrock played Jeff, and then Cooper played David. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when they're showing the military very seedy almost. I got this real seedy kind of feel, and it wasn't like that here. It was absolutely, like I said, like the Caliph where the military guys would go. It's absolutely a normal place, a normal everyday bar where you can go, you can sit and you can have a drink, you can meet people. Yeah, there were like streets kind of outside, but it wasn't like Vegas back corner prostitution type stuff. It was, you see people, military guys kind of walking up and down the streets and, kind of wave at a car and kind of flag something, but it was still out in broad daylight. You're still, that you can talk to people. It wasn't real seedy like that.
Yeah.
Aesthetically, what they chose to film a lot of this in Long Beach, but aesthetically, Hillcrest looks nothing like it does on the show. I mean, absolutely nothing. It's a different world, different place. When they showed Flicks and they panned up to that bar in Long Beach where they actually filmed Flicks, it was like this huge bar that was this isolated, like on this kind of little hill thing, and I was like, oh my god, Flicks is this little tiny bar stuck in the middle of a strip mall.
Not this grand palace,
Yeah, exactly.
It would have been nice.
Yeah, and I thought culturally,
what else do you think they got wrong with American Crime Story?
I think that the whole Andrew knowing Versace, working on that opera stuff, I think that was completely made up from the show, from what I understand. I mean, we never heard. We did hear stories from him about working on with a Broadway producer or something like that. Name drop. He would never specify an exact person, an exact situation that would create so when they showed the show, especially in the beginning, that he was going to go work with Versace and help him with the designs for some opera or something that they were doing, I was like, I don't think Andrew ever would have found himself in a situation to be in the same room with Versace. I mean, I don't know. I haven't read all the books and everything that they did, and maybe somebody is. There may be some evidence out there that somebody thinks that may or may not have happened, but I know that's not proven anywhere. And I know that at least in 96 or the year before, socially, we knew him not to drop names, not to back himself in specific corners where people can find out, if he's lying about anything. Everything was always vague. Oh, I've got to take this trip to New York, and I have to, Wall Street is just giving us such a hard time. I'm working with, this investment company. What's the name of the investment company? Well, they're an umbrella company that works with many different ones. They diversify. Things like that. He was really good at just kind of
a great liar. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you always believed him. He was incredibly charismatic. When he's out there buying everybody drinks and has this big, huge operatic, boisterous laugh, and you're always laughing with him. Who cares? Nobody thought anything different.
That is an incredible detail that you caught on there, Michael, is that Andrew's a good liar. He would never back himself into a corner by giving out a fact that he could never prove. So where, in your personal opinion, do you think Versace would fit into this? I mean, I know you said you're not very familiar with a lot of the autobiographies and some of his.
Well, and Andrew was really tied up in status, in fashion, and stuff. So I think there was an obsession probably with Versace's fashion. Versace was huge for the gay community in the 90s, and especially when Versace came out. And because remember, in the 90s almost went backwards, because we had the sexual revolution in the 60s. We had the whole free love thing, and then Vietnam hit and everything got dark. And then when the AIDS crisis hit in the 80s, and with those of us who lived through the AIDS crisis, let me tell you, that is a shock to your community that you will never fully recover from.
Oh God!
Especially when you're sitting with your friends, because I was 18 in 91. Early my teens in the late 80s when all of this hit rampant. So I was just understanding and just discovering myself, having sex for the first time when this hit, when this bombshell gets dropped on. And then when we are 20, 21, 22 years old, we're watching our friends die. We're watching people dwindle down to bones and black marks, Kaposi sarcoma everywhere. We're visiting our friends in the hospital. We're caring for our people. And then you go on the news and you hear Reagan standing up on the podiums absolutely denying this exists. You hear the gay cancer, and you hear people talking on the streets that this is what we deserved, and it's going to eliminate the gay population. You get a sense of real strong bond in community, but you also get a sense of real despair for yourself. That what did I do am I really wrong? Is this what we really deserve? Because for a while we even bought into it. We even bought into the whole gay cancer thing and the whole thing. So when that happened in the 80s or early 90s, that changed our community forever. We went, in a sense, back in the closet. We re-isolated from there. So the 90s, the mid and late 90s for us in this whole Andrew time was not as open as it was even in the 70s or even nowadays. It's like it was back in the closet for everybody. There was a lot.
It was okay, but just don't show anybody. And
yeah, exactly.
The thing is, why not? I mean, so. But yeah, it was
like, don't ask, don't tell.
You can be gay, but just don't go on a magazine cover like Versace did with his boyfriend, and don't write music about it. Don't write books about it. Don't go mainstream with it. Keep yourself in the closet, and it's okay. That's
why Versace was such a big deal at the time, because there was very few people that were in the public limelight like that were actually brave enough to come out and be themselves.
Yeah.
And to show, and things were normal. And so with Andrew, with Versace, it could have been one of two things. It could have been that. It could have been, oh my God, this guy is standing in public TV. He is telling the world, he's putting his entire corporation at risk to say that he loves men. And then that became Andrew's fascination. Or it could have been about the fashion as well. Who knows? But was it somebody he worked with? I don't think so. From what I know, I don't think they ever set foot in the room together.
So sadly, I guess it seems like his motive will always be unknown. It's just sadly an unsolved mystery. But
it breaks my heart to know that a lot of this will always just be kind of pieced together. I know, like David and Jeff's last thing. Who knows? Because nobody else was there but the three of them.
Yeah,
it's just so heartbreaking.
Exactly. And then Lee, his wife is actually the one who was left behind with his kids.
Yes.
They are left wondering. And then, of course, Andrew's family. I mean, and Versace's family. And I mean, I got to say, the fact that his sister carried on the company and his family and actually kept his legacy going and just wouldn't let it die, that was really inspiring. But, the show didn't, as far as I was concerned, it didn't actually cast on a lot of the points that you were bringing up. Like a lot of people in the gay community were like, "Oh my God, that's Andrew De Silva. Are you lying just like he lied?" The doubts and the scares that came to fruition after a lot of this stuff came out.
One thing I think one thing that Ryan got a little caught up with and a little bit confused about with the show was, did he want it to be a Versace show or did he want it to be a Cunanan show? And I think that's where he got confused, and we kind of lost both in that mix, because we didn't get a full representation of Versace and Donatella Versace and Versace's boyfriend, the Ricky Martin role. We didn't get a complete picture of that, and then we didn't get a complete picture, like you're saying, of San Diego, of Hillcrest, of what we were going to.
And we got way more taste of Versace's family than we did of any of the other victims. I mean, we barely knew anything about David and Jeff, and somewhat slightly about Lee's wife and his family. Yeah. I don't understand why they did pick out Versace. It kind of seemed like to me that Ryan was a little obsessed with him, as well, and that maybe saw that as the Versace. That this whole thing was that there's David, there's Jeff, and there's Lee, but there's Versace. We got to focus on that. So
yeah, exactly. Well, Versace was the name. It was so interesting to think about that.
The case
when we think about it, and we have Andrew Cunanan memories, or we think about the time back in '96, our summer. I never think about Versace. I think about people like David and the normality around those type of people. Versace just was the sensationalism of it all. And I think if Versace wasn't murdered, I don't think any of this would be covered the way it is today.
It wouldn't
be freaking Princess Di and Elton John at Versace's funeral,
Exactly. And it is great that they did show Versace and everything in the show, but I do wish that they would have focused a little bit more on Lee, David, and Jeff, because we did get a little bit
caretaker.
But I'm graduation in it, and it just. I kind of wish maybe like with the OJ one, Marcia Cross and a lot of them who were actually featured on the show, they said, wow, they obviously did the research. They really got into it, showed the struggle of Marcia being a single mom and a female prosecutor, and OJ being a Black man on trial during that time, and things like that. They really captured a lot of essence of the culture and things that were happening during the elements of that case. But, I agree. I think he focused a lot on the fashion, Versace, and It really was just it was like a show based on these two men. I don't understand why it was the assassination of Gianni Versace when we
Yeah.
got more of Andrew, his life and how he grew up and we were trying to get into his mind, so to speak. And
Hmm.
we got more
Well,
of Versace struggles and him as a gay man and as a fashion designer. And it yeah, I kind of do wonder where he was
well,
trying.
what's interesting. What's really interesting about the whole Versace aspect of it is if you go watch some really good, there's all those crime documentaries out there. Like you find a Dahmer one or whatever. But if you look at Cunanan ones, Versace is a very small aspect of the whole story. It's like it's the tail end, it's the sensationalism, it's the news media piece of it. But you're right. You go into Andrew's story, and it's Versace is the epilogue. It's just
Mhm.
the last sentence of the book. So Ryan choosing to focus on Versace is kind of a shame. It kind of takes away from the whole 98% of the rest of Andrew's story.
Absolutely. And I guess, just sadly, again, we'll just never know why he did what he did and what the hell. I mean, he killed these three people and then all of a sudden he's in
Four
Florida.
people. Four people.
Well, yeah,
That
him.
the graveyard
I do
caretaker
sometimes
too.
forget about that sweet caretaker. I
Mm-hmm.
do sometimes forget about them. But yeah, he's in Florida. He's what the hell makes him think that, why don't I just do this? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Well,
it's
see, as far as we know, I mean, nobody knows for sure, but Versace could have just been a target if Andrew found out that Johnny Versace lived where he was hiding out. I mean, we don't know the full motivation that what took him to Florida in the first place. He could have gone down there because he knew some other older gentleman, or he was just driving as far away from San Diego as he could. So to go to the other coast, go to some place that's warm. You know, who knows? It's like
and it could have also been just a coincidence. He could have been just trying to escape and just get
exactly.
somewhere, and then just all of a sudden, boom, he's right in front of Gianni Versace.
I mean,
And
there may be people out there listening in the chat or with that study a lot of this crime story that there may be more information that I know. But as far as I know, there was no big, huge life of Versace around Andrew Cunanan. He did, I don't think he was, lifelong obsessed with that. And Andrew was too selfish and too simple to focus on one obsession that Johnny Versace is my dream, and this the way they presented on the show that he wanted to be like Versace and he wanted to design like Versace. Andrew didn't have the time or patience for something like that. He was moving on to the next thing, to the next god, or whatever. So it would be interesting to go back and study somebody like that whom you actually knew and to see what people are doing research on, because there's always two sides of the truth, and then there's some grain of salt in the middle that's really interesting.
you just also never know what's going to make people
Yeah.
make that decision, make that switch in their mind that I'm going to do this. You just
Mm-hmm.
never know, sadly. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's something I guess that we will never, as usual, know with Cunanan. Now, if you guys have any questions for Mike and you want to put them into the comments, absolutely, please put them in, and we will definitely
review
them.
The chat. Why am I not seeing the chat?
Melinda said that Ratchet is the show that we talked about, Mike. The one, I guess, with
a new one y'all would know.
With JoJo.
Yes. I don't see the chat on here. You have to tell me. Got it. Oh, here it is. All right, what are y'all saying?
No, and Maureen says, I think you're right, Melinda. Ryan has so many shows in the works that I can't keep track of them. So, yeah.
Right?
Ratchet, I guess, is the show that
Ratchet.
we are talking about.
Yeah, it's with John and them. Pride Parade is the most celebratory joy. It's the time here in San Diego. Oh, Maureen from San Diego. Hi, welcome. What part are you in? You're right, Michael. Let's search everywhere down here from Colorado, Coronado, La Jolla. Yep, somebody else was there. Good.
Nice. Melinda loves going to the Pride Parade here in Chicago every year.
Pride's fun. If you guys haven't been out to Pride, get out to your local Pride. It is a lot of fun. Supports the community.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Okay, so leave them into the comments if you have any questions for Michael. But man, yeah, that just always fascinated me because number one, we just never knew what made him do this. And then it just really bothered me that nobody ever gave a shit about the 4 people that he killed before Versace until he killed Versace. And yeah, that's
why Yeah, that's like I said with the episode of David and Jeff's murder. I think it went over 2 episodes actually. I think we had Jeff's murder in the first one, and then we were left at a cliffhanger, and then we went into David's the second one. But I had a hard time with that episode because it was just like though David was a real person to me, a real a human being that is flesh and bone, and it's like to see something so dramatically played out on TV with the special effects and the acting, and Cody doing such a phenomenal job. Cody really of all of them. What's his place who played Andrew? Then what's his face from Glee who did Jeff, and then Cody who did David. Cody captured David more perfectly than the other three captured their own counterparts.
Really?
Because David was that all-American, just kind of not Western, just like the Midwest boy who was really, really polite, really giving to people in his surroundings, but not shy, but not boisterous either. He's just the kind of like regular, like kind of like everyday man.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something in his in David's like eyes and smile that I always remember, that he always looked kind of a little twinkle behind his eyes, a little clever. There was always something that you could see ticking behind him. Because like I said, when we met David and we were hanging around with David, we were like, there's the cute guy from San Francisco, but nobody knows why he's here. Nobody knows who he is, but he's here and he's hanging out, and he was fun to talk to. He wasn't shy. He would always, sit and talk to anybody and strike up a conversation. And Cody really captured that of David without ever knowing him. Like Cody would have never met David, or there's very, very little video or anything that exists of David or Jeff. David was a very private person as far as his regular everyday life, from what I understand. And so like they had no character studies to do. So whomever Cody talked, I would love to meet Cody Fern and ask him, who did you talk to get? I mean, probably David's sister, his family, because whoever he prepped with, he got. Cody actually, and that's why it was funny, because people were kind of bashing Cody a little bit after Apocalypse, saying Cody was kind of two-dimensional with Michael, and I heard a lot of mixed reviews about Cody's performance as Michael, but I was like, no. Cody can act his butt off, because what Cody captured with David was absolutely phenomenal. It seems simple watching him, but no, he was capturing. I mean, Cody's what, Australian or British or Australian?
I'm not sure.
He's foreign, but go for who Cody Fern is as a person, not as an actor, and then look at the work he did as David as acting. Kid can act his butt off, and it's like absolutely phenomenal. It was really, really a pleasure to see him present that role.
I wonder if he won an award for his role as David, because I know Darren Criss got an award for his role as Andrew.
Now, Darren Criss doing Andrew was not Andrew at all. Darren Criss did a Darren Criss version of Andrew. Andrew was a lot more flamboyant than what Darren Criss presented. Andrew wanted to be heard and seen when he was in the room. If you were like walking on the sidewalk up to Flicks, you would know Andrew was in the room. Andrew wanted to make himself known. Andrew was flamboyant. Andrew was very, not queeny in a sense, but very, very loud, very boisterous, with his hands and his movements, and calling people from the other side of the room and pulling people over. And Darren Criss played him a little bit more subdued, a little bit more Darren Criss-like. And again, I didn't have the pleasure of being with Andrew in a kind of more intimate, private one-on-one or small group. I was always out with him and with larger people. But when he was out and he was putting on a show, and they did a lot of scenes like that in the show with Andrew with a lot of people, he was 100 times more boisterous than he ever was, than Darren played him. And then Jeff, I didn't know.
Huh.
So
that's pretty interesting. See, I always kind of thought that when I watched American Crime Story Versace, I thought, wow, was Andrew really, flamboyant like that, very boisterous, loud with heat like that in real life?
Very.
It's awesome to know then that it's kind of like they toned him down, and
they did.
That he was so much more.
Yeah, like I said, when I was watching a certain news program that was covering all this, just to jog my memory, And there was this bartender that used to work at Flicks, and when he started talking about Andrew's laugh, everything just came flooding back.
Yeah.
Or just how Andrew was almost like a cartoon character when he was putting on a show for people. It was there was a very distinct kind of thing. And I wonder if there's video of him from anybody that exists. Because remember, this was before cell phones and stuff too. So that existed out there. But yeah, they toned him down for the show, definitely.
I find that so interesting that they toned down Darren Criss. Yeah, that's very interesting. All right, guys. So Maureen is asking, Michael, have you noticed a greater freedom here in San Diego lately? I live in Chula Vista, and everybody seems more accepting of the community here.
Mm-hmm. I guess these times, I wouldn't say anything specifically, in my opinion, of like this year or this time. I mean, I've been going through my own stuff this year, so I haven't really been like out and about in the community per se. But yeah, San Diego as a city and as a gay community is, I would say since the Obama administration and since Prop 8, and Prop 8 was a really hard time here in California. I would say since all of that stuff has kind of happened, we've kind of really self-liberated, and even in the whole Trump era and crap that we're going through, I don't think we've lost our spirit here. San Diego is a very unique community, and so yeah, I would agree with you, especially within the last, pre-Obama administration, we've come a long way, and we really have a new spirit about us in the community. Is that what she's asking? Yeah, more accepting. Oh yeah, San Diego is one of the most, as far as whole city community accepting of just about any city I've ever lived in. I mean, San Diego is an incredible community as far as a city accepting an individual community. They're neat.
I'm
San
sure
Diego's a great place.
There, but there have been many times here in Austin where I've seen people of the same gender making out in parking lots, and people in Texas are so cool with it. And I'm so glad, because I don't want my kids, they've seen boys kiss each other, girls kiss each other, and they've asked me before, and I said, hey, it's love. I would rather them love each other than fight each other or hate each other. So I would rather them love than hatred, So yeah, that is going around a lot more in the United States. That it's very much more accepting.
Well, what's great, one of the good things
I'm gay, I'm hiding. No, you can just
Well, one of the great things that come out of an administration like this Trump kind of administration is people kind of rebel against that kind of thought process. It's like, you know what, you can put so much negativity and so much hate out there in the world. We're going to show you what we're really about, and we find more acceptance. When we're fighting something, we find more acceptance around us when we have a reason to prove ourselves. And that's not just with gay communities. I mean, look at like these kids from Parkland who are tired of the violence, and they stood up and they said, you know what, we're tired of this kind of stuff, and they go and fight. People have a reason to fight. They're going to fight.
Yep.
And things happen. So.
Hell yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, guys, we're probably going to start wrapping down the live stream. I do have kids that are coming home soon, and I'm going to need a snack. I'm actually kind of feeling a little hungry now. I don't know about you, Mike. I'm thinking, I think there's something in the kitchen I can actually snack on. It's been a while. I had breakfast, but that was it. No, I really appreciate you coming on to the show and talking. Fun. Because again, I've just been so enamored with it, and especially when Ryan came out with American Crime Story. I mean, the way they presented it and showed it, it was fantastic.
Well, it's his award show. I mean, that is his annual award show now. American Crime Story carries that torch for him. So I think we're going to see a lot more from that show.
I would love to see Katrina next year. I think that's what they were going to do, was try to do Katrina. And if you guys haven't seen it yet, I do have a Mondays or Murder episode 10, season 1 that covered Hurricane Katrina. If you want to know why it is considered a huge American crime story, that
it's bad.
Of people, 2 states of people were just left to die for 7 days while our president did nothing. Sorry. I'm still very upset about that. It happened 12 years ago. I don't live in New Orleans, but I'm still pretty pissed about it. So, and then the people who had to flee were considered refugees. How were they refugees if they were Americans? I don't understand that.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting show if they finally get around to doing it, because there was a lot of stuff that went wrong with that.
They would have to literally do a 20-episode season with that. I mean, there's so much to show that went wrong. I mean, it would be like the OJ case, Versace, and another season all in one season. You know, we're trying
Yes, it's gonna be crazy.
information.
Don't forget, everybody, turn into Pose season 2, the most important show on TV this year. Absolutely phenomenal show. I wish I grew up in the ball system. Oh my God,
I
what
know.
a phenomenal show.
Before I die, I just want to go to a ball and see it. I don't want to perform or anything. I just want to go.
They're very different now. Very, very different.
Glamour and the sophistication that I will just never be, but I can admire.
Hands down. I mean, that was a really the ball shows for what they were showing in Pose, that era, the Vogue era. That was during the AIDS crisis. That was when things were really, really tough for the gay communities. And they were families. They bonded together and they took care of each other. And I think that's why Pose is such an important show, because they did not hide anything in that show. They showed how these street kids were taken in and taken care of by people who are like-minded of themselves, who didn't give a crap about what anybody was going to tell them. No, they were going to put their family first. And I have never seen so much love poured into a show. And I think it's Ryan Murphy's best show. I think it's his most important show that he's ever done. And I'm so glad it got renewed.
Completely with that, because I mean, he picked out the best actors, he picked out the best writers. Janet Mock. I mean, crazy. I got to say, Pose is definitely one of my favorite shows, and I'm only reviewing Pose and American Horror Story from now on. So I'm sorry, guys. You need to watch Pose. It is on FX Plus still. It's also on your local cable network on demand. And you can definitely watch it. Season 1 was phenomenal, and I have to say, where Ricky was kicked out of his family's home because he was a gay dancer by his dad, I cried my eyes out, because I could never imagine a parent that could stop loving their child. I have 4 kids. I could never imagine them doing anything that would make me stop loving them, let alone kick them out of the house when they're 14, 15. That's disgusting.
I think
to do that.
With Pose, what's so fascinating about a show like Pose, or even pieces of Versace, something like that, is people outside of like the lifestyle that I live, the community that I live, we don't really understand, really capture. So I've been in all sorts of similar experiences, exactly like these kids have gone through, or seeing friends kicked out of their house, or seeing friends die of AIDS. All these things that regular people in the outside see in movies. It's very, very real life to a lot of us. And what Ryan, Ryan being part of the gay community as well, and growing up in New York and stuff, he has tapped in and he has captured the love that our community can share to each other. And that's why it poses such an important show. It doesn't matter if the acting's great, it doesn't matter if the storylines are exactly perfect. It's he tapped into that love and that acceptance of community, which is incredible, absolutely incredible.
And I gotta say, Rocky is one of my favorite movies because of how brutal and bitter it really is at certain parts, with their realistic tones, like the brother to Adrian and how he treats her, things like it was very brutal and bitter. It was a very realistic version of life that you never want to acknowledge is there. And I love how Ryan does the exact same thing with his shows. He does not care who's watching. He's going to give them the truth. And it's going to be brutal. And it's going to be tough. But you're going to sit there and you're going to watch it. And damn sure you're going to be like, oh, after. I mean, it's just, it's the way that he does it. I completely agree with you. I so love Ryan.
It's like, it doesn't matter if he goes, Ryan has a tendency to go off on different directions and tangents. It's how you feel by the time it's all said and done. He makes you feel. And that's why I love his shows. 911, don't get me started.
I wish he would marry me, but he's already married and I'm already married. So that's okay.
Exactly.
Ryan Murphy, if you ever watch this, accept me and Michael as your best friends.
Exactly.
We're your community. And Brad probably would never be friends with us because he's got beautiful Gwyneth Paltrow as his wife.
Right?
He would probably never have anything to do with us ever. I don't blame him. When you have someone as talented and gorgeous as Gwyneth Paltrow, I wouldn't want to hang with me either.
Exactly.
Well, Michael, you are so awesome. Thank you again so much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry if I missed anybody's comments.
I wasn't looking either.
Oh, I'm so sorry, darling.
I wasn't watching it either, the chat. So if we missed anything, sorry.
I do see a lot of people, though, thanking you very much for sharing your story with us, Michael. And yes, thank you so much for sharing this with us, because it's really hard to get a lot of this firsthand information. And when you told me that you knew Andrew and you had met David before, I thought, we've got to talk. And you were like, I'm like, oh my God, even better. You're brilliant. So, all right, everybody, thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to show your love in the comments and, of course, in the thumbs up. And we appreciate y'all for being here. Thank you so much for watching.